All right, folks, welcome back to the Contrarians. We have an awesome panel here today. How's everybody doing?
Great,
Doing
Marco.
good.
Great to
Doing
see you
great.
hosting a panel.
Yeah, thanks, Reed. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back. Definitely a panel I didn't want to miss. Yeah, so I'm your host, Marco, and we're going to be doing a classic Dark Horse albums in our Dark Horse album series. And we're going back to the well with Kiss, and we're going to be looking at Crazy Nights. So, Crazy Nights was released in 1987. This is Kiss's 14th studio album. Just a couple of statistics before we go on here. So, they released three singles from the album: Crazy Crazy Nights, Reason to Live, Turn on the Night. They had three music videos from this album, and shockingly, it was those three songs: Crazy Crazy Nights, Reason to Live, and Turn on the Night. According to Wikipedia, Crazy Nights, the album, went platinum in the States and hit the US Billboard chart at number 18, which is pretty high. And apparently, it was a big hit in the UK as well. They hit number 4 on UK albums, was their peak position for there. So what we'll do is typically for a Dark Horse album, we'll go around, we'll get everybody's brief synopsis and review on the album. We'll get everybody's rating, and then we'll have an average rating out of 10. So what we'll do is, should I go first? Maybe I should go first as the host. I'll go first as the host, and then we'll go around. So for me, when I was growing up, I became a Kiss fan at a young age. So, and I'm a little bit younger. So for me, most of the discography was available to me right off the bat. So I didn't start with the early albums and then see how the band progressed. I had everything available to me at once. And 80s Kiss, an unmasked era of Kiss, was part of that discovery. The first thing was the Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was the first thing I ever saw, and I was a huge fan of 70s Kiss. But for me, I wasn't really dissuaded by the 80s songs, like the Crazy Crazy Nights. I didn't mind the ballads. I liked the songs off Crazy Crazy Nights. To me, it wasn't, I didn't grow up with heavier Kiss, and then this was like a letdown for me. This was just part of the experience for me. It's not my favorite 80s Kiss album. My favorite 80s Kiss album is Asylum, and including Creatures of the Night. I like Asylum a little bit better. I do like Creatures of the Night. I do like all the Kiss albums. I'm a big Kiss fan. In terms of rating them in like compared to other Kiss albums, to me, Crazy Nights is about a 7. I think probably the one album I like a little bit less than Crazy Nights from the 80s is Animalize. Although there are similarities, I think the production's a little bit better, and I think the songs are a little bit better on Crazy Nights. I like Gene's songs better on Crazy Nights than I do on Animalize. I think Animalize is Gene's worst album in terms of songs. Paul's songs are pretty good on there. In terms of live stuff, so I do have some live Kiss bootlegs here. And in terms of live stuff, what they consistently played from this album was Bang Bang You, Crazy Crazy Nights, No No No, and Reason to Live, which is interesting that they didn't play Turn on the Night because it was a single. And that's not the first time they've done that, have a single and not play it live and play songs that weren't singles. Of those songs, No 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 is cool, kind of reminds me of the Lick It Up era. And it felt to me like Gene and Paul were on different pages a little bit with this album. I think Paul was definitely kind of going towards that hair metal, more commercial sounding, slicker production, Bon Jovi-esque type of feel with his songs. And Gene kind of felt a little bit stuck in the past. No, No, No is a song that kind of reminds me of something from that Lick It Up era. Hell or High Water is a good tune for Gene too. I know Paul has a lot of songs on this album, a lot more than Gene. I think Gene only has 3, maybe 4. Good Girl Gone Bad, Thief in the Night. Yeah, so Gene has 4. All the rest are Paul's out of 11 songs. So Paul definitely had a lot more songs on this, a lot of songwriting credits. And I think Paul's performance is pretty good. I think Paul's vocals were getting better with every album in the 80s. He does kind of hit a range, in my opinion. Paul kind of hits a range on this album with a lot of the songs, and he kind of stays in that same range with a lot of the songs with his performance. Other than that, I do like a lot of Paul's songs. I don't mind Bang Bang You and stuff like this. Crazy Crazy Nights is kind of like a poppy, catchy thing. And I know that this album kind of gets slagged for using a lot of keyboards and synth. And I kind of only feel like those the keyboard and synth is really kind of overbearing, maybe on turn up the night or turn on the night and Reason to Live, I think, is when they're a lot more focal points of the songs, where some of the other songs, like I had mentioned, like No, 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 you don't really get that synthy type feeling. There's some good guitar work. This is Bruce Kulick's first album as well. And technically, I think Bruce is just as good as Vinny or Mark St. John.
Second, right?
Second,
Marco?
second, I think Asylum.
Oh, that's right. He was on Asylum. My bad. This is Bruce's second album with Kiss. He was on Asylum, and he did play live on Animalize. That was just a mistake on my part. But again, I like Bruce in Kiss, and I think Bruce fit Kiss's sound in the 80s like very well, and I think he was a great player, and I think he played live really well. A lot of these songs come across live really good, and I think he was just technically as good as Vinny or Mark St. John. Their styles are a bit different. Vinny was a better songwriter. Bruce does not have a lot of songwriting credits in Kiss, but I think Bruce fit the band perfectly. Other than that, like I said, I would give this album a 7 out of 10. Animalize, I would give like a 6.5 out of 10 when we're comparing them to the Kiss discography. And I think I do like Hot in the Shade slightly better. That one's grown in my estimation over time. I used to not like it as much. I would probably give that like a 7.5. Anyway, so my rating for Crazy Nights, that's my little review. I do like it. I think it's fun. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure, and I don't think the synth is as bad, but that was the style at the time. So people were using keyboards. Their songs were very commercial. Reason to Live was a big hit. It was a ballad. Other than that, 7 out of 10.
Okay.
Let's go around the clock here. Why don't we go with Reed next? So you're next on my screen.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give a bit of a broad perspective. Going back to 1987, I very much remember when this album came out. I am a huge supporter of 80s Kiss. I love all of the 80s Kiss albums except for Music from the Elder. I have fought many times on Contrarians videos for Bruce Kulick being the best guitar player Kiss ever had. And honestly, I don't know how anybody could listen to this album and then say that Ace is a better guitar player. You may like Ace's music better. That's just a judgment call. But a better guitar player? No, no, no. I remember when this album came out, it was immediately slagged off in the press for being a pop album, for having the keyboards, for using Ron Nevison in the production. And in fact, this is one of the albums that led me to a policy of I don't read reviews now before I get an album, because it poisoned me against this album. And I got it, and all I could hear were the things that the music press was telling me that I should hate. Because by 1987, we're also starting to see thrash as a more commercial force. So I was already moving into heavier rock, and then here Kiss comes and they're doing a lighter album. But I wanted to give a little bit of perspective on that, because I think Paul Stanley he's reading the tea leaves. If you look at the 80s, Kiss started off the 80s at the very bottom. They had just about destroyed their career with Unmasked and Music from the Elder. Creatures of the Night got them back some credibility, whatever that means, but it didn't sell. It took, something like 10 years just to sell gold. I mean, it still hasn't sold, despite so many people saying that it's a wonderful album. Lick It Up sold better. Animalize sold really well. And then I think Paul's reading the tea leaves. He says, hey, the music, we have a choice. We can either go super hard or we can join kind of the pop crowd. And they put out Asylum. It's not as heavy. It also doesn't do nearly as well as Animalize. It sells like a quarter of what Animalize did. It is still only certified gold. Although, interesting thing about Kiss, they only ever care if an album makes platinum. After it makes platinum, that organization never goes back to recertify anything. There are no Kiss albums that I could find that were certified multi-platinum, but I may just not have looked at the right album. It's like they check platinum and then forget about it, so they can say we got a platinum album. And he's looking at the young and upcoming bands, which are in 1986, you have Poison put out Look Like the Cat Dragged In, and Bon Jovi with the unstoppable Slippery When Wet. Not only that, I have heard Paul say in interviews that he recommended Desmond Child work with Bon Jovi because Bon Jovi's first two albums did not make a commercial splash. They had one single, Runaway, and then their next two, or that album and Fahrenheit, whatever, didn't sell. and they got with Desmond Child and put out this monstrous album. And Desmond had already written songs on 2 albums for Kiss that hadn't sold that well. And I bet Paul was going, what happened? Well, clearly we need some of that magic. So they write songs with Desmond Child. They get Ron Nevison in. The same year, Ron Nevison does Bad Animals with Heart, and it goes multi-platinum. Aerosmith comes out with Permanent Vacation the same year as Crazy Nights. It goes multi-platinum. But at the time, Crazy Nights actually sold as well as either Bad Animals or Permanent Vacation. However, they got to that Kiss glass ceiling and never broke through it. And I think that the big reason is because of the ballad. Aerosmith had Angel. Angel was everywhere in 1987. You could not get away from that freaking song if you tried. Every radio station was pushing it. MTV was pushing it. It was everywhere. Kiss put out Reason to Live. Marco, I'm going to modify something you said earlier. Reason to Live was a very modest hit. It was a hit, sort of, but it only made number 63 on the Hot 100. Angel was, I think, I had it written down. I'm sorry. It's much higher. Number 7, I think. So Angel was an enormous success. Reason to Live barely tickles the charts. And that had to be driving Paul nuts, because I think Reason to Live is an amazing song. It's well crafted. It has these beautiful introspective lyrics. It's the wrong band to do it. And then you listen to the other songs on this album, and they're all, Paul in the 80s was writing very juvenile songs like Let's Put the X in Sex, or You Make Me Rock Hard, or All Night, or Bang Bang You. And then he had these introspective songs like Reason to Live, or Who Wants to Be Lonely, or Tears Are Falling. And the bros, they like these stupid sex lyrics, and they're not so much into, hey, baby, I miss you and I'm gonna cry. If he had sold that song to a female artist, if Hart or Tina Turner or even like Lita Ford had done Reason to Live, I bet that would have been a massive hit. They were just the wrong band. And that's kind of my take on this album as a whole. Is I think it's a very good album. I think Kiss was they were at their glass ceiling. It sold platinum. It kept up with Permanent Vacation and Bad Animals in 1987, and then got left in the dirt because Kiss can only sell so much. They were too old. Aerosmith was too old too, but for a lot of people, Aerosmith had disappeared and then came back like a brand new band on Permanent Vacation. Whereas Kiss had been in the trenches kind of fighting and trying to stay relevant. And I think they were just too old now for the kids to really get into them. But I will fight to the death that Bruce Kulick slays on this album. The guitar playing is so good. Every single song has a 10 out of 10 solo. No, No, No has 5 10 out of 10 solos. It's an incredible piece of music. And I just don't know how anybody can listen to this and go, oh, it's just a pop album, which I'm not saying anybody on this panel will, although I've heard that a lot over the years, especially the songs. Bruce has several co-writing credits with Gene. And doing a little research, it looks like that's because Bruce did the music and then Gene came in after the fact and did the lyrics and vocal. And all of those songs are fantastic hard rock. Pardon me, I'm unfamiliar with the Wendy Williams version of Thief in the Night. I know that she recorded it first, but Gene does have a co-write on that song. I can't compare it, but I think it's a great muscular ending. And I completely agree with you, Marco. They are on very different pages, Gene and Paul. Paul's trying to be Poison and Bon Jovi. Gene is still just trying to be 80s Kiss. But regardless, Bruce kills, and I do think it has fantastic vocal performances from both Paul and Gene. So, yes, they sound like Heart on 2 songs. They sound like Bang Bang You could not sound more like Bon Jovi if it tries. And I've always had it in a bit for Crazy Nights because of that really strange cadence Paul uses. People try to take my soul away. It's too on the beat. He doesn't sing like that normally. And it sounds exactly like Poison. But nonetheless, I would also give it a 7. I think it's a good album. I think it's got the best playing in all of Kiss's career for the leads, and I think it's well worth checking out.
Awesome.
Also,
Nice.
I think this cover's pretty cool.
I was just gonna say, ironically, you're talking about them not breaking the glass ceiling when they're breaking the glass on the album cover. And one thing I just wanted to mention quick before we move on, and I'm gonna go to Parish of Rock next so we can get the UK perspective, because I hear it was a bit of a bigger hit in the UK. But this was the first album to not have Gene or Paul on producer credits since Music from the Elder. So this was produced by Ron Nevison. Between Music from the Elder and Crazy Nights, at least Paul had a production credit on all of them, including Animalize, which he produced solo.
Right.
Solo. Anyways, let's move over to Parish of Rock. Parish of Rock, let's hear what you have to say about Crazy
Just
Nights.
trying to get my camera sorted. There we are. That's better. Can you see me okay?
See it just fine.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start by saying that this is one of my top 5 Kiss albums. So, Creatures of the Night is my favourite, then Destroyer, then Dynasty, then this one, then Love Gun. So it's not going to be a surprise, having said that I'm going to be talking very favourably about the album. It was a big hit in the UK. In fact, it was the biggest hit of all of their albums. It reached number 4. Mainly, I think, driven by the song Crazy Crazy Nights, which was a big hit as a single. And that also got to number 4. The only other song that got to number 4 for Kiss in the UK was God Gave Rock and Roll to You, which was also a number 4 single. And other than that, I'm not sure they actually had any other top 10 singles. So it shows you that they did pretty well. And I suppose to put it into context, Asylum was a top 12 album. Animalize was 11. Hot in the Shade was 35. So you can see it was quite a bit bigger than the albums around it. So that's the context of the album, I suppose. I mean, from my point of view, if I put through the highlights, and I'm going to repeat some of what's been said already, but I think Bruce Kulick's guitar playing is really good on the album. I think it's actually quite heavy, but because it's quite low in the mix, I think you don't actually hear that very often. But I think there's quite a lot of riffs there. I really like Eric Carr's drumming on it. I think there are times when he's actually the best player on the album. So I enjoy that. I think Paul and Gene's vocals are good. I think this is the first album since Lick It Up where Gene seems actually interested and has contributed some decent songs. And I would say a bit like Aerosmith with Pump or Permanent Vacation, I think this is Kiss sort of showing the new guys on the block how hair metal should be done, really. I think it's a really good sort of hair metal album. So if you like hair metal, I think people would like this. If people don't like hair metal, they probably won't like this. So that's kind of my highlights of the album. On some of the songs, Crazy Crazy Nights, I think it's a great song. I think it's really fun. I'll admit it's really cheesy. It's very corny. It's Paul Stanley at his campist. But I'm afraid, it's just a song I really like, and nobody's going to change me because that's who I am. So there you go. Other songs I like on it, I think I'll Fight Hell to Hold You is good. Another good song by Paul. I don't particularly like Bang Bang You. I think it's very corny. And I think it's Paul Stanley at his worst. No. I like the drumming on it. I think it's driven. It's a pretty hard driving song, but again the lyrics are silly. I think, but Gene's voice sounds good on it. Hello High Water, I think it's a decent song. But I think Paul's voice comes through really well on My Way, which is kind of an understated track. I think it finishes side 1. But I think it's pretty an understated song. But I do think Paul's voice is really good, particularly when he hits the high notes. And it's one which I think is actually quite keyboard driven, but it suits it. So I think that's a decent song. Reason to Live was a minor hit in the UK, got to number 33. I like that. I think it's a decent power ballad. Certainly at the concerts, it's the sort of song you can see people holding up lighters to back in the day, or phones to now. And then Turn on the Night, which was the last single, got to number 41 in the UK. I have to say I don't particularly like that song. I think it sounds like it comes off a film track, sort of a film soundtrack. It's Darren Warren, I think, co-writes it. Don't like that very much, but I do think the album finishes pretty well with Thief in the Night. I think it's a pretty strong closer. Again, I think the guitar is really good on it as well. So maybe a little bit mixed on some of the songs, but I definitely think it's one of their better. But as I say, it's my fourth favorite album. So after Creatures in the Night, it's my favorite 80s album. I was going to give it an 8 out of 10 when I finished playing it, but I had it on Spotify, and afterwards came on Only You Will Rock Me by UFO. That kind of made me think, oh, maybe the album's not quite as good as I thought it was, actually, because it kind of put it into context. So as a result of that, I've decided to downgrade it slightly to 7.5. So I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Wow. Excellent. Thanks for the review. And I'm appreciate that you said that, that some of the lyrics like Bang Bang You are kind of corny and cheesy, but I do think they slunk even lower and got sleazier with the songs they put out on Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits. Like those aren't even like double entendres. They're just going right for the, But all right, Parish of Rock, thanks for your review. I think we're going to go over to Martin.
Sorry, there was one other thing I was going to say, actually, which is I don't think Crazy Crazy Nights was played very often live, but whenever they came to the UK, they always seemed to play it, presumably because it was a big hit over here. And I think it's a really good live song. It always gets the crowd going and sort of gets everybody up on their feet, etc. So I think it's a good live song. But as I say, I'm not sure the US or other parts of the world saw that very often. I think it was only really in the UK they probably played it.
No, it looks like I've got a bunch of bootlegs here, and they played Crazy Crazy Nights on every single one. And I've got Tokyo, I've got New York, Philadelphia, England, Richmond.
Is that recent? Is that relatively recent, or is that back
87, 88?
Yeah,
all 88,
so
87 shows.
Even on the last few tours over here, they still play Crazy Nights or Crazy Crazy Nights. So, quite. You
mean like more recently?
Yeah, more recently.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
And as I say, probably because it was a hit. Kiss. I mean, you can't imagine Kiss particularly clamoring for what people want, would you? You wouldn't say they're particularly a populist band. Anyway, they were playing it. They tend to play that when they come over here, or did anyway.
Awesome. All right, Parish of Rock, thank you for your review. We got a 7.7 and a 7.5, and we'll go to Martin Popoff next. What did you think?
All right. Well, I'd rather be talking about Tigers of Pentane, or actually, put it this way, I'd rather be talking about this one, but I'd rather be listening to the Tigers of Pentane album. But so I hope I don't offend anybody here, but I'm definitely not a fan of this album. It's my least favorite of the 80s albums. It's my least favorite of every album all the way to the end, except for Psycho Circus, I would say. So it's my least favorite since probably Unmasked out of all of them. So this was released September 21st, 87. So it's 2 months after Appetite for Destruction starting to sweep all this stuff away and make it look kind of silly. I don't think Ron Nevison gets a good production here at all. I think he has more bad sounding albums than good sounding albums anyways. He is listed also as the engineer, but there are 4 assistant engineers. So really, when it comes to sound and stuff, Ron's defense would probably be, I'm not concerned with the sound and all that stuff. That's the engineers. I mean, that's sort of the defense anyways, where we often blame the production on the engineer, right? But I think it sounds, the drums sound horrible. They sound boxy. Everything sounds screechy. I don't think Bruce sounds very good on here. I don't like the drum performance either. And when it comes to the keyboards, there's 3 songs to my ears that really, where you hear them prominently. My Way, Turn on the Night, and Reason to Live. I don't think they add anything to the songs. I think they just distract you and remind you that they don't have a keyboardist in the band. I love the album cover. I think the album cover looks like Rock and Roll Over, with the 4 corners kind of thing. I think that's pretty cool. When it comes to the 80s stuff, I think it's really exciting the way they kick things off. I mean, first there's the concept album, but the next 3 are kind of exciting. Kiss is in there on the ground floor, inventing hair metal essentially with Lick It Up and Animalize. I also love Asylum, and I think it's the best sounding out of all of them, all the '80s ones. And I think Hot in the Shade, just often more by virtue of it being a really long album, but I'm feeling a little bit of that. We got to try harder here, which you really get on Revenge. I feel that starting to ramp up with Hot in the Shade. So, when we talk about this definition of Dark Horse albums, I can say, to me, it almost has to be an album where it can be a little love it or hate it, where you can feel some excitement about it. Like maybe a Hot in the Shade, maybe a Carnival of Souls, maybe a defense of the last two, Monster and Sonic Boom or whatever. But I'm not really feeling that concept here at all. Like I say, I've always had it in for this album. Just briefly through the songs, I think Crazy Nights and Bang Bang You with the two double word things are two of the stupidest songs they've ever done. They feel like bad versions of Lick It Up. So Lick It Up, I feel like they were really giving you something exciting through total simplicity. It's like, how dare they write a song this simple? Here, I think they just kind of fall flat on their face with them. I just can't stand that nursery rhyme melody of Crazy Nights. So part of the problem with this album is that's one of my most loathed Kiss songs of all time, and it kicks off the album. So I'm immediately in a bad mood, right? And No has always bothered me. I don't like that solo at the beginning. I think with the tapping and all that. Well, the tapping situation. I mean, come on. It's almost sounds like a parody, right, of a Van Halen solo, right? But the other problem with that song is it feels like that whole Van Halen, David Lee Roth thing of the fast songs being frantic and not sounding heavy because they just sound like they're slightly out of control kind of thing. So that OTT, when Kiss does OTT, I don't think they do a very good job of it. The songs I like on here, I love I'll Fight Hell to Hold You. I think that's so classy. It's actually complicated. I love the chords. It's heavy. It reminds me of Creatures of the Night. And I really like When Your Walls Come Down. I think that's got some sort of darker, minor kind of chordy feel to it, which is kind of cool. And I like Thief in the Night quite a bit too, even though it starts off as a little bit of a Gene Simmons bass farts song, but then it proves later. It's got the big hanging chords thing in it, and it's kind of cool that way. So yeah, Reason to Live. I just cannot stand that song. I mean, that really reminds me of a cross between like Is This Love by Whitesnake and Foreigner, Waiting for a Girl Like You. The way it's got kind of like the maudlin sort of soap opera chords, but it's also like got a bit of a drum beat to it. It's got a little bit of a pulse to it. So yeah, don't like that at all. Don't like any of this ballad situation, all this Diane Warren, Desmond Child stuff. Just not into it. So I'm feeling with this album, I'm feeling like they're panicking and losing the premise. I thought the balance was perfect on Asylum. I love Asylum. I think that album to me has so much integrity. It just feels, other than the album cover, I wish it had a better album cover, but that album just, I still feel confidence in the band. Like I'm into them. I love what they're doing. I feel like even when I don't like a song, I give them the benefit of the doubt because I'm feeling confident about the band. Here, I'm feeling like they're just panicking and just pandering to this hair metal. Like I say, they staked their claim and invented hair metal, essentially. Twice. I mean, they did it in the 70s, and then they were right there on the ground floor with all those other bands, very, very prolific, an album every year, right? I think they had an 82, an 83, an 84, and 85, right? So they're right in, and an 81, and an 80. So, and a 79, actually. But to have a big, good quality hair metal album in 83 and in 84, they are right in there with Rat and Great White and Quiet Riot and Motley Crue and giving us great. So they're like the grandfathers of this in a certain way, and in a cool way, because they actually, like I say, set it all up for us in the 70s as well. But then at this point, I just feel like they're followers. And it's thin and it's just screechy and hard on the ears. It's got that cocaine ears production, as they call it, right? It's just very boxy and mid-rangey. So there you go. I'm going to give this, I think this is a perfect 5.5 album, where, I would say 80% of it is salvageable and over that 5 mark. And then 3 songs or so are in that 8 sort of mark, and it all kind of balances out with a few bad ones. 5.5. And like I say, I don't want to sound like a massive complainer because I love every album around it. And like I say, the only other album in all the last 24 years that I don't like, really don't like it, don't like, basically all the other ones I like, is Psycho Circus. So there you go, 5.5.
All right on, Martin. How much does it drive you nuts that the album's called Crazy Nights and the song is Crazy Crazy Nights?
I know, it's so weird. Yeah.
That's how 5.5 is a bit higher than I thought you were going with that review, but excellent. Thank you very much, Martin. And I think what we'll do is we'll move on to David next. Take it away, David. What did you think of Crazy Nights?
Thanks, guys. So I'm going to be a little more kind to it than Martin was. I think I'll try not to regurgitate what's come before. Some really good points. I think a lot of this, for me anyway, I think for all of us, comes down to timeline, right? Your entry point into the band and whether or not this album lands as a big disappointment or not. And I think for me, timeline is Crazy Nights is my entry point to Kiss. So because of where my timeline is, Crazy Nights was the first Kiss album that I had my hands on. It had already been released. So that's what got me into the band, believe it or not. So there's always going to be a little element of nostalgia and connection to me for this album. And then, like Marco, I went in reverse and started buying Kiss albums in the, cassettes at that time. I don't think initially the discography wasn't out on CD quite yet, but I was buying cassettes and at out of order because there wasn't really a lot of, no internet and this kind of thing. And so I'm just, whatever's available at my record store every week, I'd grab a cassette, really based album cover or whatever. So I'm all over the place, right? I'm going from Love Gun to Unmasked to whatever. And so I'm getting things a lot out of order. And so as I'm, kind of diving into the catalog, I'm not colored by, hey, I got into Kiss in 1977 with Love Gun, and now I don't understand this, whatever this Crazy Nights Kiss is, right? And so I had the benefit, in some way, the benefit of being able to go in with fresh ears and just kind of explore the catalog, in a sort of a non consecutive way, right? And so that was interesting. But I think for me, Crazy Nights, and so I try to approach this with some neutrality and not let sort of the nostalgia color me too much. But I think, kind of just jumping on what other folks have said, I think Reed mentioned heart, and I think really at this time, and some of the things that were mentioned, I think Martin mentioned the word panic, and Reed mentioned the word heart, and I think that sums it up to some degree. I think this was a band in panic in a lot of ways. They were had some good, I think maybe they would agree, albums that sounded good, maybe better than this from a content standpoint. Lick It Up, they had a pretty good run there, right? Lick It Up, Asylum, Animalize, but it wasn't translating into getting them next level, right? I mean, they had the Kiss glass ceiling, if you will. I mean, they were platinum selling records, but everybody was selling platinum then, right? In a way, it wasn't really what it meant that much in terms of the machine and being able to feed the Kiss machine financially, right? So there's a good book you guys have all probably read, but Chris Lent, the Kiss and Sell book. I mean, if this is a great book, if you find a used copy, if anybody's watching that hasn't seen it. But, if you dig into that book, you see where this band is at this point financially, and it's not a good place, right? Kiss has had some good records, they've been on MTV, they're touring, but they're not selling out arenas, and they're in a bad place financially. So I think there's some panic, and I think it's business panic, and I think they're looking at Heart. Particularly, Reed mentioned Bad Animals, but I think they're looking at that self-titled Heart record from 1985, and they're saying we got to duplicate that. They need a home run. They don't have the ballad that kind of pushes all these other albums. You look at, Martin mentioned Foreigner and Whitesnake, and Aerosmith was mentioned, and I think Reed mentioned Ballad, right? The thing that takes a lot of these bands from platinum to quadruple platinum is the ballad. And I think they needed to kind of take to next level that, get the girls at the shows and that kind of thing. And I think, they were looking at themselves as a 70s band trying to, reinvent themselves in the 80s and kind of have that level of success that the Aerosmith 70s band reinventing themselves, Heart, the 70s band reinventing themselves, even Whitesnake, right? Even though they weren't a 70s band really in the United States, they were a 70s band reinventing themselves as a hair band, and so I think Kiss was trying to do that. I think that what happened here was they were, looking at that Heart 85 record. And I think, Ron Nevison, there's a 2-year gap between Asylum and Crazy Nights. If memory serves, they waited for Nevison, instead of kind of getting on that, Martin mentioned its album tour until here. The 2-year gap between, Asylum and Crazy Nights. And a lot of that was waiting for Ron Nevison. I don't know if that wait, caused them some timing issues and not hitting, sort of the iron while it's hot and taking advantage of the peak of hair metal and getting in there. I mean, they're sitting and waiting for 2 years when they could have been putting out an album in 86, right? Instead, it's 87, because they're waiting for the producer they want to do this. So I think maybe they got the album they wanted. And I think it didn't have, while there was some reasonably, successful singles and the album obviously shipped platinum, I think what really kept it from getting next level and getting to where they wanted it to be was that we didn't have a Here I Go Again or an Is This Love or a Angel. I mean, they, and it wasn't for lack of airplay. My memory is MTV was cycling a Reason to Live video. I mean, it was everywhere. I mean, every hour you get the Reason to Live video. It just didn't take, for whatever reason, I think, like for the other bands. Had Reason to Live been Angel or been Here I Go Again or been Is This Love, then Crazy Nights is maybe a 4-time platinum record. And, the tour does better and everything. This whole conversation is different. I think, the tour is another thing that what kind of wasn't mentioned, but this wasn't a successful tour. 130 dates. The average attendance on this tour was under 6,000. And that's taking out the Monsters of Rock festival. They're taking out, not including the festivals and the club dates. So if you take out those outliers, I mean, it's 5,600 people a night. It's not, the tour's a financial disaster. The sets are short. I think it's 70-minute sets. The staging is pretty minimal and stripped back, relative to a Kiss performance. So I think you're getting this convergence of they're not picking up new fans, like a Whitesnake or an Aerosmith, and they're losing the core fans. They're losing a lot of their fans along the way that have been, sort of disenchanted with Kiss. So they're in a bad spot. Like I said, the record does well, reasonably well from a sales perspective, but I think overall it's a disappointment. I think the tour's a disappointment. I happen to like the record. I think there's some really good material, just shifting the material a little bit. I think I'll Fight Hell to Hold You is a tremendous song, maybe one of my favorite songs in the entire catalog. I think the Paul songs are strong as they were in this run in the 80s. Gene's starting to come around. We all know that Gene checks out and dates Cher and gets in movies and tries to act, and Paul has to steer the ship, and really Kiss becomes his baby at this point. And so, but I think Gene's on his way back, and I think as the records progress, ultimately to Revenge, Gene's back engaged and writing good material, and he's not just mailing it in. But I think you're starting to see a path back here. It's in transition. The Gene material is better. Obviously Paul's got more songs. It's not as balanced as it has been in the past with Kiss. It wasn't like I have 5, you have 5. So Paul's really in charge, at least in that way. Or Nevison's in charge. He's like, hey, Paul's songs are better. There's, we're going to put these on there. I think, there are, interestingly, some of the songs that didn't make the album were pretty strong and maybe would have made this album stronger. Songs like Hide Your Heart, which appeared on Hot in the Shade, was demoed at this point. There's a song called Time Traveler that ends up on the box set. And then, of course, a lot of people talk about Sword and Stone, which is an amazing song, which was demoed for this record, that for whatever reason Nevison didn't put on the record, which probably is better than half the songs on this record, which ends up being recorded by Bonfire. And if you can find the Shocker soundtrack, I think they gave it to a member of Loverboy, and it ends up on his solo record. So this song probably needed to be a Kiss song. And, you know, so there was some weird decisions, I think, around the material that was chosen for this record. And I think some of the better songs were left off. Production, I'll wrap it up with production. I think it is glossy. I think it is 80s. I think it is Nevison. I'll agree with Martin. I don't think it hasn't aged as well. While it remains one of my favorite records, partially because of my entry point nostalgia, and because I love a handful of the songs on there are some of my favorites in the catalog. I think the production hasn't aged as well. I don't think it sounds as good as it could. I think that they were really leaning into that heart thing and the keyboards. And I think that if you listen, there's demos floating around of some of these songs like My Way and Hide Your Heart. There's demos that are available in the ether if you can find them. And I think you'll hear those songs demoed with the guitars up and the keyboards either out or back. And I think maybe don't take the keyboards out completely if you're going for that more polished sound, but I think the guitars up a little bit, the work that Bruce did, keep the edge a little bit more. And I think for my taste, these songs will come across better, particularly a song like My Way, which I think is I think Parrish mentioned, most people despise it. I think it's a pretty good song. I think that it's just buried in keyboards, and if there were guitars leading that song, I think it's a really good song. And I think Paul's vocals, which is also mentioned, I think he finds that he can sing really, really high, and he stays there the whole time. And I think that probably some of the stuff he's doing here, he pays for it later. I think some of his vocal problems later in life probably started here. It's really high. I think I'll Fight Hell to Hold You, My Way, it's so high. Probably couldn't do them live if you wanted to. Try to sing those songs 3-4 times a week. So while they're cool, I don't think they had to be in that register to be really good songs. So I think he pushes himself maybe a little too much. While the vocal performance is amazing, I think he probably pushes his range and stays there a little too much and probably pays for it. As far as a rating, I was going to give this song an 8. I'm going to deduct a half a point for Paul's thong on the back of this album cover, which I think I love the album cover. But even as a 15-year-old boy, I thought that the thong on the back was a problem. It's a problem then. It's a problem now. And negative half a point for the thong, not necessary. 7.5.
Nice.
All right, good points.
Good job.
Excellent points. One quick thing before we move on. Yeah, as a kid, like the song "Crazy Crazy Nights" for me was super catchy. That was probably the biggest earworm song for me as a kid for Kiss. And now it's just nostalgic, so like I don't mind it as much. But good points. Why don't we move on to Jake, not from State Farm? You have the final word.
Oh this was my idea. How am I supposed to follow all you guys? Yeah, so I think I'm the youngest here. So my dad had all the Kiss records up to Animalized growing up, so I heard all of that stuff. And then I went through like an 80s hair metal phase when I was like 15, and this was one of those albums I picked up. And at first I hated it, and I don't know, over the time it's grown on me, and you guys really picked on, I felt like, Reason to Live. But growing up, I heard like, Is This Love, and Here I Go Again, and Home Sweet Home, and Angel, and what were the Heart ones? It's like 3 a.m., the equivalent to 3 a.m. So I'm drawing a blank on some of this stuff. I've been up all night working. But the Heart ballads and all those other ballads, the ones that are constantly played. They were so played to death. By the time I got to this, I was like, I'm sick of them. If I never hear them again, some of them. And Sister Christian, that's another one. If I never hear Sister Christian, still, I'm okay. But Reason to Live, I think, is a fabulous ballad. I would give that a 10 out of 10. I love that song. By the time I got to it, it felt fresh. It felt different. I had never heard it. I had heard all those other ones 15,000 times. I was done with them. I love that ballad. Hell or High Water is just a barn burner. Someone said to me once that it was either Eric or Bruce that played the bass on that song, and just the bass on there just hits and it doesn't give up. I love that. And Gene's vocals are relentless. And maybe I'm in the minority, but I think Crazy Crazy Nights is a good opener. I like Crazy Crazy Nights. It's cheesy, it's stupid, but when you when you're looking at, if you stop and take away, okay, it's a Kiss album, but it's Kiss doing 80s hair metal. That's what it's supposed to be. Complete cheese. I like it. It's what it's supposed to be. It's perfect for an opener. The only bad songs on here, I think, are Bang Bang You and maybe No No No, but even those work in the flow of things. They're not, bookending it. They're right kind of in the middle, so they don't really interrupt the flow. Good Girl Gone Bad is another barn burner, I think. And When Your Walls Come Tumbling Down, just absolutely great. Someone, I think it was Reed that said Kulik's the best guitar player Kiss has ever had. I have to second that. Ace was sloppy, and his sloppiness gave a unique style to early Kiss. But I think this lineup of Kulik and Carr and Gene and Paul, I really, really think that was the best technical lineup the band ever had. Just phenomenal players, outstanding players. You guys kind of all summed up all the points that I could go for. But I would give this an 8 out of 10. And if you wanted me to rank it as a hair metal album, I would give it a 10 out of 10. I think it's one of the most perfect hair metal albums out there.
Wow, excellent points, Jake. Thanks very much for
Thank you, Jake.
suggesting
Very
this
cool.
album. On average, we've basically given it a 7. So it's a 7.08, which I think, in fairness, in the context of Kiss album discography, I think that's a pretty fair rating. I think Martin brought up a good point. Like, yeah, if I were to compare this to like an Appetite for Destruction or something like that, I might have to rethink my rating. But I think in the context of Kiss albums, I think 7's pretty fair for Crazy Nights. But
Right.
other than that, thanks, Jake. You had the last word, and I think we'll wrap it up, and we'll say thanks everybody for coming by. We gave this a 7 out of 10. What did you think of Crazy Nights? Let us know in the comments. Favorite songs, least favorite songs. Other than that, you can join us on Patreon. We have a great community over there, and you can join these panels as well. And we do trivia, we do other stuff like that. We have a Discord. You can join. The link is in the comment section, so you can join us there. You don't have to be a member of the Patreon, and you can join. There is a free tier of Patreon. You can join the Patreon for free. Other than that, if you like the content, just give us a like and subscribe. That's really cool too. It helps us go on. And we also have a Ko-Fi, and Martin's got his Kiss at 50 book. So Martin also put out a Kiss book.
Sure.
And so
pretty recent. Yeah.
We're all Kiss fans.
Mm-hmm.
Martin's always putting books out. Run with the Wolf, the Rainbow book just came out, which is an awesome book, and you'll see some familiar faces in there. So I always blur my background. But anyways, other than that, this is the Contrarians. If you agree or disagree, we all just love music. We like talking about music, and let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
Very
Thanks,
cool.
everyone.
Thanks, guys. That was fun. Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much.
Hey!